All right, today we're jumping into a truly fascinating spiritual idea. The concept that the clearest path to God isn't through light, but through what's called a dark night of the soul. So we're going to break down exactly what that means and why some of the great mystics considered it the most direct route you could possibly take. The entire idea really hangs on this one single question. What if the path to spiritual light was actually through total darkness? I know, it sounds like a complete contradiction, right? But stick with me because there's a profound logic behind it that we're going to unpack. Okay, so here's our roadmap. First, we need to get crystal clear on the goal, this idea of union with God. Then, we'll look at the three main tools for the journey, the guiding virtues. After that, we'll dive into how those virtues actually purify the soul, explore that central paradox of darkness, and finally, see why this is considered such a safe and secure path.
So, let's start at the end, shall we? Because before you go on any kind of journey, you really need to know the destination. Where is the spiritual night actually supposed to lead?
Look, the objective here is so much bigger than just having a belief or understanding God on an intellectual level. The text is very clear. The end game is the actual union of the soul with God. We're talking about a complete merging, a total transformation. That's the whole point of this journey.
Okay, so if that's the destination, how in the world do you get there? Well, any big journey requires the right tools. And in this case, the text points to three specific virtues that are absolutely essential.
And these tools are the three classic theological virtues: faith, hope, and charity, or, love. But here's the key. According to the text, these aren't just passive, nice ideas. They are the active agents, the literal means and preparation that make this whole union with God possible in the first place.
And this is where things get really interesting and kind of upside down. The text argues that these virtues don't work the way we'd expect, by filling us up with light and warm feelings. No, their main job is to actively darken and empty the soul, basically stripping it of everything that isn't God to make room for God.
So, how does this actually work in practice? Let's get into the nitty-gritty and see exactly how each of these virtues goes to work on a specific part of who we are.
This chart lays out the whole framework perfectly. You can think of us as having three core capacities, or faculties: our intellect for thinking, our memory for holding on to things, and our will for desiring. And each virtue has a very specific assignment. Faith takes on the intellect, hope works on the memory, and charity purifies the will. Let's dig into each one.
First up, faith darkens the intellect. Now, this is a really tough one for us today, right? We live in an age where we want to know everything, to have all the data. But this path says we have to let go of that need to understand it all. Faith creates a darkness in our intellect by asking us to accept things that are way beyond our human reason.
Next, hope's job is to empty the memory. And the logic here is actually pretty simple when you think about it. You can only hope for something you don't already have. So for true spiritual hope to exist, you have to empty your memory of attachment to everything it's holding on to. Not just stuff, but even spiritual experiences or feelings you've had in the past. It creates a necessary void.
A famous quote from St. Paul just nails this idea. Hope that is seen is not hope. It makes perfect sense. If you can already see it, if you already have it, you're not hoping for it anymore. Real spiritual hope has to be aimed at what's completely beyond what we currently possess or see.
And finally, we have charity, or love, and its job is to purify our will. It does this by creating what the text calls a nakedness of affection. What a powerful phrase, right? It basically forces us to love God so much, above everything else, that we have to strip away all our other competing desires and attachments, leaving our will totally pure and focused on that one thing.
So all of this brings us right back to that big central paradox we started with. We've seen how it's supposed to work. But why? Why would a path of darkness, emptiness, and this kind of nakedness be the best and most secure way to find spiritual fulfillment?
Let's just tackle this question head on, because everything in our culture screams the opposite. We're taught to gain, to add, to build. So how can taking things away, emptying ourselves out, possibly lead to gaining something so much greater?
Well, the answer lies in a complete shift in how we look at things. The normal worldly path is all about addition, getting more knowledge, more possessions, more things to love. The spiritual night flips that script completely. It's a path of subtraction. The whole idea is to empty the soul of all the clutter, to create a clean, open space that only God can come in and fill.
But this journey isn't just about emptying yourself out for the sake of it. It's also about finding real, unshakable security. In fact, the text argues that this is the most direct and, believe it or not, the safest path to the divine.
And the promised benefits are pretty huge. The text says it provides complete security. Why? Well, if you're not attached to anything, you can't be tricked or manipulated by your own mind or anything else. There's nothing to grab onto. It also purifies the soul of pride and selfishness. And ultimately, it's called a straight and short road to that union we talked about.
So the key takeaway here is really to reframe the whole journey. It's not a path of loss. It's a path of gaining the ultimate security by letting go of everything that's insecure and temporary to begin with. You're basically making a trade, the finite for the infinite.
And that leaves us with one final thought to chew on. This whole concept is about making space. So if you were to apply this principle to your own life, right now, if you had to consciously empty out one area, whether it's an attachment, a belief you hold on to too tightly, or a desire to make room for something greater, what would you choose?